So artificial intelligence excels at converting unstructured data like text, documents, or images into structured formats that are suitable for automating. And this is especially important when building intelligent autonomous agents. To ensure that your agent functions effectively, it's really essential to plan out your data clearly from the outset, whether you're starting fresh or you're integrating an existing data set. Let's consider invoices. Invoices come in a variety of formats. They could be a document you get in the mail, an email with a PDF attached, an email with the information in the body, or you could collect invoice information from another platform via an API or a webhook. Additionally, even though these are all invoices, they're likely to contain different information. For example, this one has payment terms like net 30, net 60. This one has acceptable payment methods. This one has a date of service rendered as well as a date for when the payment is due. The invoice numbers here have different leading text, and the dates could always be formatted in different ways. So this is a lot of potential different data for an AI to sift through. When we as humans read through these invoices, we just use our own natural reasoning to figure out the information that we need, the information that we don't, and where that information is on the invoice. But to set our agent up for success, we need to help it understand how we make all of these deductions so that the agent can then make the choices down the line for us. And we can do this by standardizing this data before feeding it into the further steps in our workflows. The first thing that we need to do is to create a table to hold all of this data in its ideal final format. Now, you might have existing data that you're bringing in, or you might be starting from scratch. Either way, you can create a new clean table with the processed data. We're going to pull in each element we need from either a new incoming invoice or our existing data imported to Glide. For this example, let's start with 6 columns. A text column to store the extracted invoice date, a text column to store the converted JSON output, a query JSON column for the date the invoice was received, a query JSON column for the payment due date, and another query JSON column for the total amount due on the invoice. And finally, a relation column for the vendor that the payment should be sent to. This last column is a relation because we've already set up a helper table with all of our vendor information in it. All we need to do for the invoice processing workflow is to pull in which vendor from the table the payment should be sent to. Now, you might need more columns than this for your use case, or you might need to do more calculations with the data once you extract it, and that's totally okay. But to keep things simple, we're going to stick with these 6 for now. All of the other values are query JSON columns because the workflow simply passes the JSON that the AI creates for me. Let's see how. So now that we have a place to store everything, we can extract the data from our invoice. As I said before, this might be coming from different places and in different formats: email, webhook, file upload. So let's build the process first for just email, and then we can apply the same steps to the other formats once we've tested everything. So we've got a new workflow here already with an email trigger. The first step is to extract all the data from the incoming PDF attachment with a document to text step. All of the raw unstructured text from that PDF will go into the text column we set up for invoice processing. Next, we want to extract the data for the payment due date, the date the invoice was received, and the total amount due on the invoice. We're going to use text to JSON steps for this because JSON is a very structured format that's easy for computers to understand. I'm going to create one prompt to extract all 3 of these fields at once. Then I can query that JSON later to extract the exact data points I need. Ultimately, I want to end up with JSON that looks roughly like this. So in my text to JSON step, I'll be very specific about the task and my expected output. Here's my prompt. Analyze the provided invoice text and extract the following key information into a structured JSON format. Follow these specific guidelines for each field, and then I'll list those. So I talked earlier about how we make decisions when we read this kind of data because it's coming in different formats, and so we have to do the reasoning as humans about which part of the invoice corresponds with each piece of data. Now, we can get the AI to do this, but we have to be really clear. Let's talk about the invoice date first. There are different formats that the date can be in, and it might have a variety of labels indicating that it's the invoice date. We want the AI to recognize these and convert them to a standard format for the JSON output. We also know that there will likely be more than one date on an invoice. The due date is also usually present, or maybe even a date of service or the date that something was ordered. So we need to account for that in our prompt. So I'm going to add a section about extraction guidelines and go from there. You can see in the prompt here, I've put the number 1 to indicate that it's the first field that I'm interested in. And then I've given the AI advice, like it usually appears near the top of the invoice, the type of labels for the AI to look at, the type of common format, etc., etc. So now we can go through the exact same exercise with total amount due. And as we do this, it's really important to think about all the different clues that we can give the agent about how to find this particular piece of data, this number on the invoice. Much of what we are in the habit of doing each day, we don't really think about. When we're teaching someone else to do it, though, we need to be incredibly clear. We need to surface every single detail about our process. When I personally look at this myself, I look for things like total or balance due, and I make sure to take the number that includes taxes, shipping, or any other fees. And I also usually know that this is near the bottom of the invoice. So I'm just going to put that all in the prompt and see what happens. So here I'm saying things like ignore subtotals or line item amounts, remove currency symbols and convert to decimal number with 2 decimal places, etc., etc. So you probably get the idea now. We're going to do the same process again here for the instructions about the due date. A lot of the same date parameters apply, with the added caveat that payment terms like net 30 or payment due upon receipt should be considered. So once I've got all of this into my prompt, I can set the output to be the text field that we created before to hold all of this JSON. To test if this prompt is working or needs to be adjusted, I'm going to use a few test invoices to see how the data comes in and out on the other end. And also, if you don't have test invoices lying around, you can just go to ChatGPT or wherever and ask AI to make it for you. It's a great way to create kind of different scenarios and data that might actually cause you to design and think about the creation of your workflow in different ways. So the last step is to pass each value out of the JSON created from the workflow. Here in our JSON output column, we can see the JSON coming in from our converted text. Because of how we set up our table and our AI steps, all we need to do is to set each of these query JSON columns to pull out the values we need. And when we do this, all of these values will begin to populate automatically. So that's it. We've taken unstructured data from an emailed invoice and taught an AI agent how to read and analyze that invoice for us. If we need more or different information from the invoice in future, we can just set up more text to JSON steps or query JSON columns in just the same way. And if we need to start a process with invoices coming in a different way or a different format, like a file upload or a webhook, we can just duplicate this workflow and change the trigger. Now, we used processing invoices for this example, but you can use a similar technique to create any kind of data standardization process for your agents to handle your workflows for you.